people who say charity starts at home are often people who aren't actually supporting charity. There's no hierarchy in terms of needs, there's no hierarchy in terms of compassion. 7,000 packages arrived every day for 5 weeks. Hi, I'm Josie Naughton and I'm the co-founder and CEO of Choose Love, a charity supporting refugees and displaced people around the world.
Tell us, what is Choose Love?
So Choose Love is an organisation that supports refugees and displaced people, and we do that by raising funds and getting those funds to the most effective grassroots local organisations who are working on the ground to support these communities. And it can be anything from supporting search and rescue boats in the sea, children's hospitals in Syria, right the way through to community organisations supporting unaccompanied minors. Communities know what they need themselves. They're just not often given the resources. There's not that kind of rebalancing out of power. So that's what we feel is the kind of really helpful thing that we can do.
And your personal story, could we go right back to the beginning? Like, where does it all begin? Were you like a young child who was like, I want to be an activist, or I want to work in charities?
And in 2015, I just was watching the news and felt so sad at all the images that we were seeing of the refugee crisis. So in 2015, 1 million people arrived in Europe seeking sanctuary, mainly from Syria, but also from Iran, Afghanistan, Eritrea, Sudan, and felt like, actually I have to do something to help. And then, there was an article once that said we were accidental activists, and that kind of is what happened. There wasn't an intention to form an organisation, but somehow my life took me back here. We aimed to raise £1,000 and 1 van load of tents and sleeping bags.
So that was the first thing you did?
That was the first thing. And I think so many people wanted to help, but people didn't know where to put that energy. And right from the beginning, this was like a really politicised issue. So a lot of the big organisations who were funded by the government weren't allowed. So we ended up raising over £50,000 in the first week. And so many people said that they had tents and sleeping bags that we asked a big yellow storage. I went there in my lunch break. And
that's like a storage unit.
Where people go and you rent a room while you're in between moving house and put your stuff in. And they gave us a room for free. So we thought, okay, great, we'll put that address online. And then we also did an Amazon wish list that was directed to that address. And I got a phone call saying that 7,000 packages were due to arrive the next day. 7,000 packages arrived every day for 5 weeks. So we had to suddenly advertise online for volunteers, people from all walks of life. We went to Calais in northern France on a Friday evening after work. And my life, I always say, it's like there was before that day and after that day. There were 5,000 people living in a field. People had shoes on. People didn't have water, people didn't have food. If people had a tent at all, it was like a little festival tent that had holes in.
Could you then explain how does someone go from that point and then to now, I think 8 years later, how did that happen?
In the same kind of way, I don't think, at least not for the first few years, we never wanted to build an organisation that would be there a few years later. In fact, it's quite the opposite. We wanted to find a way to solve the problem or get the people in positions of power to listen and understand what was going on so that we weren't needed to be there. We were just thinking of creative ways to raise money from the public, putting on music events, selling t-shirts, using social media to tell people what was really happening, what we were seeing was really happening on the ground. There's so many untruths in the media. And
what are some of those untruths that you want?
You know that the people who are arriving in the UK are not refugees, that they are criminals, that there's an invasion happening. This kind of language has really, really dangerous effects.
I think the UK Home Secretary, Suella Braverman, has used the word.
She has used
the word invasion.
She's used the word invasion. She's used the word criminals. And then we use our platform to talk about these things and give people the opportunity to write to their MP, to get involved in being the change that they want to see. For us, I think, you know, our focus as an organisation is refugees and displaced people, but really we're about equity for all. And we actually, the Choose Love shop, as an example, the sleeping bag item used to not only fund sleeping bags for refugees and asylum seekers, we also supported several homeless charities in London. There's no hierarchy in terms of needs, there's no hierarchy in terms of compassion. We should be helping everyone. But I would say that, you know, when we work with a homeless charity, for example, they're never saying, right, our population is more important than refugees and asylum seekers. The people who say charity starts at home are often people who aren't actually supporting charity at home. I think that we have to create a narrative about that support is possible for all. It doesn't have to be one person or the other. There absolutely is room to make sure that kids born in the UK aren't using food banks, but that we can also show compassion to someone who's had to flee war. So I think there's support for everybody as possible.